Math 3, Unit 2, Section 4. Today we're talking about solving quadratics by factoring. So the main thing that you need to make sure is that your equation is set equal to 0. And then once you factor, you set each of your factors equal to 0 and actually get an answer for x. If you notice, yesterday all of the equations didn't have an equal sign. Okay? So on number 1, the first thing I need to do is what? Good. Subtract 10 to both sides. When I do that, I end up with 4x squared minus 4 equals 0. When you start factoring, you always check for what first? GCF, and in this case, GCF would be 4. And so we factor out of 4, which means you're dividing each of these by 4, and what am I left with? X squared minus 1. Can that be factored further? Yes. What can I do? Yeah, these are a difference of 2 squares, correct? So because x squared minus 1 squared, 1 times 1 is still 1. So we end up with a 4, and then I have x minus 1 and x plus 1 when I split up each of the squares. Questions up to this point? Okay, once everything is factored and you can't factor any further, you set each of the factors equal to 0. So I normally always kind of draw lines down, and I set each of these equal to 0. So 4 equals 0, x minus 1 equals 0, x plus 1 equals 0. Now, can 4 equal 0? No, 4 equals 0. 4 cannot be the same as 0, right? So that one does not actually give us a solution. Then x minus 1 equals 0 gives us 1, and then x plus 1 equals 0 gives us a negative 1. And so those end up being my 2 answers for this problem. Any questions? Okay, number 2. Is it already set equal to 0? Yes. So the first thing we're going to do then is, this is a trinomial, and we're going to multiply 1 times 28. 1 times 28 is what? 28. And then my adding number is going to be what? 11. Very good. So what 2 numbers will work for me here? Perfect. 7 and 4 is correct. Now, do you notice how there is a 1 in front? So this is where we can use the shortcut if we want. Do we want to use the shortcut? Some say no, some say yes. So on this first one, I won't use the shortcut. Later on today, I might. Okay, so remember that we end up breaking this into our 7x plus 4x. So I have x squared plus 7x plus 4x plus 28. So far, so good? And this is still equal to 0. Just running out of space. Okay, so we group them. What's my GCF of the first group? Good, x, and I'm left with x plus 7. What's the GCF of the second group? 4, and I'm left with x plus 7. X plus 7 is now my GCF. And so I get x plus 7 and x plus 4, and that equals 0. You can just put in the bin. Okay, and then we set each of these equal to 0 and solve. So we have x plus 7 equals 0, x plus 4 equals 0, and when I solve those, what answers do I get for x? Good, x equals negative 7 and x equals negative 4. So the shortcut that we talked about is just, once we have those 2 numbers, 7 and 4, if my coefficient in front is 1, that I can go right to this point. Right here, where you put them into the parentheses. The x plus 7, x plus 4, and then you can solve it. So you can skip this step. But again, you can always do it the other way. Okay, questions? All right, number 3, what do I need to do first? Very good, subtract 2x to both sides. We have 4x squared minus 4x plus 1 equals 0. Is there a GCF? No. So we have to multiply over always. 4 times 1 makes 4. That's my multiplication number. And then my adding number is what? Negative 4. Good. Okay, so what numbers multiply to be 4 and add to be negative 4? Good. Negative 2 and negative 2. So this one I can't use the shortcut on because why? Good. Coefficient in front of our x squared term. So we rewrite this out, 4x squared, but instead of minus 4x, we're now writing minus 2x and minus 2x and then plus 1 equals 0. We can split these into the 2 groups. What's the GCF of the first group? Very good. 2x. And what is left? Good. 2x minus 1. Now, in the second group, what is going to be my GCF? Negative 1. Good. And the reason why we're taking out a negative is because we want that first term to end up being positive. Okay, and so we get 2x minus 1. Okay, and what do I do now? Good, 2x minus 1 is my GCF. And then you end up with 2x minus 1 again. Another way of writing this I heard was just 2x minus 1 squared. Either way will work. And then, so do I need to set 2x minus 1 equal to 0 twice? No, because we're going to get the same answer, right? Now, can you guys do this in your head? If you can't, you can show the work. If you can do it in your head, I'm okay with that too, as long as you don't mess up. But what would I do here in order to get the x by itself? Add 1. And so then I have 2x equals 1. And then my last step would be divide by 2. And so this answer is x equals 1/2. Yes? You're right. Where do you not see 2 times 2 is 4? Oh, well, so what I was saying is that this one right here and this one right here, they're the same. You could write it either way. Because 2x minus 1 and 2x minus 1, do you see how they're the same exact thing? You can write it as a square. And you wouldn't take that square and multiply it through. Anytime you have a binomial, so 2 terms in a parenthesis, you have to do your FOIL method or distributive property out. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, so are you okay now? You get this? Or no? Yeah. Okay. All right, any other questions? Okay, number 4, what will it's already set equal to 0, so we're good. What will I do first? GCF, is there a GCF?
Yes.
What is it? 3x, okay, and so we factor out of 3x, and what am I left with? Good, x plus 5. Can I factor any further here? Nope. So we go ahead and set each of these equal to 0. So we have 3x equals 0 and x plus 5 equals 0. For the 3x equals 0, if you divide both sides by 3 in order to get x by itself, what does x equal? 0. 0 divided by anything is 0. And then here we subtract 5 and get x equals negative 5. So those are my two answers. Okay, any questions? All right, moving on. And we are not going to do all of these examples, just a few of them here, because it's just practicing more of what we've already done. Do you notice on number 1 how it's already set equal to 0? Yes? Okay, so all you would do at this point is set each of those factors equal to 0. So x minus 7 equals 0, x minus 3 equals 0, and what does x end up equaling?
7.
Good. So if you ever get a problem like that, lucky you, that one is not too difficult. Okay, this one, it's kind of set up how we've already done all the other problems. I'm just going to give you the answers. We're not going to work through this one. This one ends up being x equals negative 9 and 3 if you end up wanting to go back and practice it for some reason. We're going to move on to number 3. What do we need to do with number 3? Good. Why are we subtracting by 7x? It needs to be set equal to 0. Very good. So we subtract 7x to both sides. We get x squared minus 12x minus 64 equals 0. What would I do now? Good. Multiply. Find your multiplication number. So 1 times negative 64 is negative 64. That's my multiplication number. And then negative 12 is my adding number. Now, let's say that you look at this number right now, because this 64 is a bigger number, and you're like, I don't know which numbers work. I always, whenever I'm like unsure, I start with the number 1 and I start working through all the different numbers that multiply to be 64, and I do it in a sequence so I don't miss anything. So 1 times 64, but that doesn't make 12. Okay? 2 times 32 also can't add to make 12. Will 3 times something equal 64? No. Okay, 4 times what is 64? 16. Can that make 12? Yes. So that's the pair of numbers that ends up working, but I need to make sure that when I multiply them, it makes a negative 64 and adds to be a negative 12. So which one will have to be negative? Good. A negative 16 and a positive 4. So this is where you can use your shortcut because the coefficient in front is 1. So all you're doing now is you're going to make your 2 parentheses set equal to 0. Since you have an x squared in front, x goes in front of each of the parentheses. And then because this is a positive 4, you get a plus 4. Because this is a minus 16, you write a minus 16. Bless you. And that's it. But it'll only work with the ones, right? One coefficient. Okay. And so then you set these equal to 0. This one's going to end up being x equals what? Negative 4. And this one will be positive 16. Okay. Any questions? All right. Number 4. You can use the shortcut or not. I want you guys to try this one on your own. I'm going to give you about a minute to solve that one. Don't forget to make it set equal to 0. If you have the answer, raise your hand and I will come by and check it. I didn't make it around to everybody. I'm super sorry. But it looks like most of you are done. The answers that you should have got were -7 and +3. Some of you flipped those around, so let's just go through this real quick. First, you want this set equal to 0. Some of you forgot to do that as well. So we get x squared plus 4x minus 21 equals 0. Next, we would multiply. So 1 times -21 is -21 for multiplication, and then you have a 4 for adding. Am I able to use the shortcut on this one? Yes, but first, what are the two numbers that will work? 7 and -3. Always double check. 7 minus 3 does make 4. 7 times -3 does make -21. So make sure your signs are correct. So now I can go to the shortcut here, which will end up making my 2 parentheses equal to 0. Split up the x squareds as x in the front, and we have a +7 and a -3, which means that x will equal -7, +3. Any questions? Okay, I, just to make sure you guys have this, want you to try one more problem on your own. So why doesn't everybody do number 3? Okay, that sounds good. Number 3 right there. And again, I'll walk around, and if you need help, raise your hand too, and I'll make it over to you. Okay, so the correct answers were 9 and -5. I had some good questions as I was walking around, and so I want to share some of those with you. The first thing is that we want the set equal to 0. Most of you did that this time. Well done. And so we subtract 4x to both sides. Now, do you see any plain x terms over here? Before the -4x? No. And so you need to make sure that you write your equation in descending order. So descending is you start with your highest exponent to your variable, and then you go down and go down. So the next one is -4x, and then -45 equals 0. Okay, at this point now, this is where we would multiply and factor. So that's 1 in front. 1 times -45 is what? -45. And then that's my multiplication. And then -4 is my adding. Any questions up to this point? Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do here is what? Figure out the numbers that work, right? And so what are the two numbers that work? Very good. -9 and 5. Double check them, but they do add to be -4. Multiply to be -45. We factor, we get x minus 9 and x plus 5 equals 0. And when we set those equal to 0, x equals 9 and x equals -5. Are there any questions there?